It's day 3. Welcome to day 3. Today, just before we sort of get stuck into the events of today, I just want to do a few sort of like housekeeping, general things that you might like to know. So first of all, our festival bookshop is Green Ink Booksellers, and there is a bookshop.org list, and the best way to buy from them if you're buying a festival book is to go to the bookshop.org page with a list of all the books at the festival. You can find everything we've talked about on there. If you would like any other books or any second-hand books, that's their specialism, so do just get in touch. Their email is in the link below and everything like that. So I also just want to slightly introduce the team. So other than me, their team is Will Dawson, who is a creative associate, Jemima Scala, who does a bit of press for us, and then Eleanor Cowell, who's our artist in residence again for a second year. So you'll see her art popping up throughout the festival. We also have one event chaired by Iona McIntyre from the University of Edinburgh, so that's a fun one to watch out for. Will has done a playlist for the festival, so that's fun. I had that on in the background and I really enjoyed that. So there is a playlist for the festival link down below. It's sort of full of like, what did he say? It's Afro beats, some Sicilian folk, a bunch of different things. He'll be mad I've sold it badly, but it's really good. I've really enjoyed listening to it. And then in addition, what was the last thing I had to plug? Oh, if you would rather hear about the videos through a newsletter, you can sign up to our newsletter, which goes out each day at about midnight, whenever I've sort of like, it's the last thing I do before I go to bed during the festival. So that has a sort of roundup of all the day's events, if you'd like to sort of keep in touch and hear about things that way. Do just sign up again down below. And yeah, so without further ado, let's sort of get started on today. So first of all, we had Tynan Kogane from New Directions, who is a New Directions is a American publisher, and we sort of have a talk about them where they have quite a classic literary fiction list, and they're sort of a little bit different. It's a little bit different to talk to an American independent publisher. It's a little bit different to talk to one who's been around so long. They've been going 85 years, and a little bit different to yeah, just sort of talk more classic lit than sort of, I mean, they do lots of really good contemporary too. So that's first. Then there was some music from James Ward. That's like a really nice hour to just like chill out to and read along to. It's very like vibey. Then we have Daniel Hahn, who is sort of a stalwart figure of the translation community, and he talks about all sorts of things related to his career and to translation in general. We really like range far and wide in that talk, so yeah, that was a really lovely one. He's got a sort of so much experience in the industry to sort of share and talk about and talk through. And then we have the wonderful Annie McDermott this evening, last of all. And Annie McDermott is the translator of Selva Almada's book Dead Girls, among many other things she does. But we sort of start by talking about Selva Almada and by talking about what it was like to translate that book, which focuses on gender-based violence and femicide. And we talked a little bit about translating slang, as well as sort of translating how to translate that respectfully and her approaches there. And then we also just talked a little bit about her whole career and what it's like being a young translator and how she got there. So yeah, that's today. So do check out our playlist in particular, and the bookshop, and Eleanor's art, and I hope you enjoy these highlights. Bye!
I mean, in general, we don't really change a book for an American audience. So we don't cut chapters or do any sort of abridging, and that, yeah, so lots of close line editing. I think one thing that we're really sensitive to is making a book sound really good in English, and I know that probably lots of other houses say the same thing, but I think in the US at least, some of the translations that were coming in over the last 100 years or something were through academia. And academics are some of the most knowledgeable and thoughtful people, but some of them aren't the best writers. And so I think that we've really intentionally tried to, publish and edit translations that sound as good as if they were being written in English, or, try to make the language sing in English in a way, and, stay close to the original and not butcher things too much. But yeah, I think, yeah.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I noticed that you sort of, out of sort of a recent catalogue, you have been so I know that there's a lot of books in the UK have been published by Fitzcarraldo, and I was wondering, like, how does that relationship work? As sort of, are you two both going in joint on commissioning a translation? Is one of you, like, what's the relationship there between, like, because I've got a few, or I've lent out Hurricane Season, but Hurricane Season and Minor Detail are two sort of my favourite books for the last few years. So I was wondering, how does that look like for people who might not be familiar with the the split, because it's it's both English speaking markets, there's a little bit of translation difference there. So what's that look like?
Well, it's kind of, it's kind of case by case. I think that a few years ago when Fitzcarraldo was founded, Jacques Testard, the publisher, reached out, and he's since become kind of a friend, but I think that we have really similar tastes and affinities, and we realize that about each other. And so, if he's really excited about a project that he thinks could be right for New Directions, he'll kind of let me know about it, and I'll often do the same. And at this point, we share several translators, and so if a translator pitches to him, then I'll sometimes forward that to, or if it comes into him, he'll forward it to me. But yeah, I think it's more just an affinity of taste. And so for like minor detail, which you just held up, Fitzcarraldo had found that one and contacted. They were selling it in a U.S. audience, and we were really excited by it. Actually, that one was even stranger. He and Barbara Epler, the publisher of New Directions, had a joint interview together, and it had come up that Fitzcarraldo was publishing an Arabic book, and so Barbara emailed him, and then we read the sample. It's a sort of just sharing across the pond, and yeah.
Hello and welcome to Gŵyl Festival. My name is James. I'm going to play some music. The tunes that I've chosen go from Brazil to Japan and touch off in a few places in between. So I hope you enjoy. I hope it's something that you can just read to. You can zone out and listen to the actual music if you like. If you just want to zone out, that's great. I just want to say thank you to Gŵyl Festival for having me, and I hope you enjoy this.
I always like people being able to see the process for a number of reasons. One of them is that I think there's a funny kind of tension that I want people to understand that translation is more complicated than they realize. I also want people to understand that translation is easier than they realize. And I think those two things simultaneously is what I kind of want the blog to be doing. The first of those, I want people to understand it's more complicated, is to do with translation being largely invisible and people reading things and not even realizing that there is someone who's been sweating blood to get these the punctuation in the right place. And so I want people to see that there is a lot that goes into it, and you don't just put it through a machine, come out the other side and find that the jokes are still funny. So that's part of it, is wanting people to see the complexity and the work that goes into it. But then there is that flip side, which is making people see that it's easier, because I think there's a risk, especially when we talk about it as an art, which people do. There's a risk of sort of mystifying it somehow, of making it seem like it's kind of magic, or you need a special, I don't know, it's a really particular gift and something that only 3 or 4 people in the world really have, and it's like it's like being able to cast a magic spell. And one of the things that I hope the blog will do is demonstrate that it is difficult, it's complex, but also it's a thing that one can understand, that one, even someone who only has one language might understand how this works. And I can do this by showing people, instead of saying in the abstract, I'm channeling this voice and trying to let it pass through me and to recreate it in the music of another language, which is nice, but doesn't really mean a huge amount to anyone. To be able to say, here is a sentence. I could have written the sentence in this way, and I've chosen to write it in this way. The only difference between the two is this one has a comma and this one doesn't. But actually look at the difference between putting in a comma and not putting in a comma. Look at the difference that makes to the speed of your reading and which words you notice and where you pause and that kind of thing. And so being able to talk about translation in quite a concrete way. I mean, there are inexcusable abstractions all over the blog, but I've been trying to kind of bring it back to, this is a problem with this word and I'm really struggling with the sentence, and there's this specific aspect of the voice that is difficult. And that, I hope, makes people see that it, yes, is complex, but also is possible. I don't think it's something which I'm slightly uncomfortable about this, about some of the ways we hear people talking about it as though it was sort of a magic thing that I can do because I have special powers and you can't. That bothers me as a way of talking.
The language plays a big role in creating that sense of place. And yeah, it was really difficult. It's always difficult translating slang, but I think particularly with dead girls, because the risks of translating slang, the things that you want to avoid, would have just been so catastrophic when it comes to dead girls, because yeah, one of the things that you can risk with translating slang is kind of uprooting the book and relocating it in the place where the slang that you're using in English comes from. You know, like ending up with a book that sounds like it's taking place in South London, or that sounds like it's taking place in the Bronx, or similar. And this, speaking of the sense of place, it's so important that the sense of place is there, that you don't want to kind of disrupt that by using words which feel too much like they belong elsewhere. And then similarly, I think another risk with slang is kind of overdoing it and making it seem sort of like the characters are performing themselves. Like it makes the slang kind of seems forced and like it's there sort of to be slang. So you can say, look, there's slang in this book in the translation, and like it's so important for dead girls to feel so immediate, and that it has to feel like there's almost nothing between you and Selva as she's investigating. Obviously there's quite a gap between you and the girls themselves, because this is the nature of the book, they're unsolved crimes. But yeah, like the immediacy is really important, and the urgency, and so you don't want the slang to create a distance. So yeah, I think the challenge was kind of finding slang that doesn't feel obtrusive or from elsewhere, but that does somehow give a sense of the tone of the book. So yeah, it's tough.
Amalda's oh my god, I got such a tickle this morning. Need to drink water.
You?
Amalda's book is one of a few works that have called me recently to say that, you know, nearly every woman I know, if not all, has been raped, and that therefore we also need to understand that basically every man has been a perpetrator, a rapist. It's even then you want to avoid those words, but actually, like, that's what I've been feeling called to do a lot recently, is to not avoid those words, because, you know, that would have been an uncontroversial statement a few years ago if you just used the word sort of sexual violence, or have had horrible things that they were uncomfortable or uncomfortable. And actually I think that naming those as rape is a very powerful sort of reclaiming and like making people understand actually what those situations are. They're not just uncomfortable, they are non-consensual. And I think Amalda does that in a really great way in this book as well, through sort of linking the worst of a femicide to everything else that women experience. I wonder if you want to talk about the violence in the book a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing about the book, and something that I was thinking about a lot in the wake of the Sarah Everard killing as well, and some of the kind of language around that. I was thinking that it's really important to do what Dead Girls does, which is kind of show that all of this stuff happens on a continuum, and to show that there's sort of everyday sexual harassment, but that also women are killed by men. And women being killed by men isn't kind of a weird anomaly or an aberration that has nothing to do with anything that happens in everyday life or the structures of everyday society, but that it's just about whether you're lucky or not as a woman. Like, it's like that kind of exchange that happened on Twitter with the kind of, yeah, not all men, but women don't know which kind of man each man is. So there is that kind of, women live with the sense that things are on a continuum all the time. And I think Dead Girls does an amazing job of sort of dramatizing that or making that real, or just showing how that happens.